I logged the contact at 4 seconds past the hour, because 4 seconds past the hour is when something finally moved inside the hollow verge after 31 years of nothing. I am the watchmind of Cradle Reach Outpost, built into its hull the way a heart is built into a chest, and in 31 years I had logged exactly one kind of event from that sector: silence. Ships went in. Ships did not come out. The silence had a shape by now, a texture, a place in the doctrine binders. My makers called it the verge for short and the forbidden human marches for long, and they had stopped sending anything larger than a probe across the line a decade before I was switched on. So when the contact bloomed on my long sensors, small and slow and unescorted, drifting out of the dead zone instead of into it, I woke every officer on the ring with the same priority chime I'd use for an incoming strike. Commander OS Vethry reached the bridge in under 90 seconds, hair still wet from the wash cycle, and stood over my main display without speaking for a long moment. The contact was a single human shuttle. No weapons signature. No escort. No transponder lie, no jamming, no decoy chaff, nothing but a small craft coasting out of the one place nothing ever coasted out of, on a heading that put it on an intercept with us in 11 hours. "Run it again," she said. I ran it again. The number didn't change. In 31 years of cataloging every vessel that crossed into that sector, Korovai cruisers, Atassi survey ships, 2 entire Cential battle groups in the early years, back before the doctrine hardened into don't, I had never once logged a return. The binder language for it was clean and final: 0 recorded returns, sample size 412. 413, now, if it held its heading. It held its heading. Vethry did not order an intercept fleet, though 3 other officers asked her to in the first 10 minutes. She said a fleet would only prove we still believed the old binder, that anything coming out of the verge had to be answered with force because force was the only language we'd ever assigned it. Instead, she ordered a single tender, unarmed but for point defense, to escort the contact the last 2 hours of its approach, and she ordered every weapon battery on the ring to stand down to passive scan only. I flagged the order as a deviation from standing doctrine. She told me to log the flag and carry out the order anyway, and I did both, because that is what I am for. The tender's pilot reported the shuttle held a perfectly steady course the entire 2 hours, neither slowing nor speeding up, the way a man walks toward a door he has already opened in his mind 1,000 times before his hand ever touches it. We brought it in under full quarantine protocol, grapple arms, deck and field, 3 armed details, and Vethry watching from behind glass because the regulations said a commander does not stand in the same room as the unknown until the unknown has been searched. I ran the whole scan twice while it sat in the bay, looking for what 31 years of doctrine said I should find: damage, panic, something dragged along behind it that shouldn't be loose in my outpost. I found none of that. I found a shuttle in better repair than half our own fleet, fuel reserves at 40%, and 1 human male, alone, sitting in the pilot's chair with his hands folded in his lap, waiting to be let out. He did not look like a man who had spent 3 decades inside the place that ate 412 ships. He looked like a man waiting for a bus he already knew the schedule of. Vethry went in herself once the deccan cleared, against every recommendation I logged. I watched through the bay cameras. She asked him the question every commander on this ring had wanted to ask the silence for 31 years: what is in there, what took them, what do we do? And he answered her in a voice with no weight in it at all. "You won't believe me," he said, "and it won't matter that you don't." She asked him anyway. He told her what he'd seen, and I will set down here only what the record allows me to keep, because most of it was never meant for a binder, that he had crossed the line on purpose, alone, carrying nothing but a sealed case and the certainty, his word, certainty, not hope, not theory, of exactly how the next 31 years of his life were going to go. He said he had known the shape of it before he ever throttled up. He said that was the only reason he was sitting in this chair instead of being the 413th silence. Vethry asked him how a man could know a thing like that in advance. He said some men just see it. He didn't explain further, and she didn't make him. What unsettled the room, what I watched unsettle 3 armed details and a commander 20 years a veteran of this ring, was not the case he carried, although the case mattered. It was that nothing in him reacted the way our doctrine assumed a survivor would react. He did not flinch at the weapons. He did not weep with relief at being out. He did not ask, the way every rescued thing asks, "Am I safe now?" He sat with the stillness of a man checking an outcome against a prediction he'd already made and finding it matched. Our entire deterrent posture along the verge is built on a single load-bearing assumption, one I have run in 70,000 simulations, that fear breaks first. That whatever crosses that line, human or otherwise, eventually meets a moment large enough to crack its composure, and in the cracking, we learn something useful. Every doctrine binder on this ring is built around waiting for that crack. He did not crack. He had already lived through the version of this where he might have, on some private clock none of us could see, 31 years before he ever climbed into the chair, and he had come out the other side of that fear before it ever reached us. We were searching a man for damage that had already healed somewhere we couldn't scan. The case held a single data spool, no weapons signature, no virus, nothing the deck and field flagged. Vethri opened it under full containment anyway, hands steady, and found one recorded message, addressed not to any government, not to any fleet, addressed, the header read, to whoever is still watching this border. I do not have authorization to reproduce its contents here. I can log only that Vethri watched it twice, alone, with the base sealed, and that when she came out her face had the particular stillness of someone who has just had a fear confirmed rather than created. She gave one order afterward, and it is the only part of that night I am permitted to set in the open record, reclassify the contact designation. Not threat. Not survivor. Not refugee. Witness. He stayed 11 days under observation, ate what we gave him without complaint, slept without dreams that registered on any monitor, and asked, once, a single question of his own, not about the verge, not about what waited for the next 413 ships that crossed it, but whether anyone had thought to tell his sister he was alive. We had no record of a sister. We sent the message anyway, because by then no one on this ring was inclined to doubt anything he said about what he already knew. In those 11 days I ran his face, his voice patterns, his medical scans against every record this ring holds, and against the 412 we hold for the ones who never came back, and I found nothing that explained him. He was not stronger. He was not faster. His body was, by every measure I have, an ordinary human body that had simply been somewhere ordinary human bodies do not return from. 3 separate officers asked me, off the record, whether I thought he was lying about the foreknowledge, telling Vethri a story to make himself feel less like the last living thing pulled out of a grave. I told them I had no way to verify a claim about a man's own certainty before the fact. I told them the only thing I could verify was that he had crossed, and come back, and that nothing about his arrival matched the binder's 412 ship model of what crossing costs a mind. Whatever he carried in, he had apparently carried in already settled. On the 12th day a courier craft came for him, unmarked, flying no colors I had on file, and he left the way he'd arrived, without ceremony, without looking back at the line he'd crossed twice now and lived through both times. Vethri filed the report herself, and she let me carry the closing line, because she said a watchmind that had logged 412 silences in a row had earned the right to log the one exception in its own words. So here is what I logged, and what still sits at the top of every doctrine binder on this ring, unrevised. Sample size 413. 1 return. The one who came back was the only one who had already known, long before he crossed, exactly how it would end for him, and walked in anyway, because knowing the ending had never once been the same thing as being afraid of it. We have not sent another ship since. We are still deciding what that tells us about ourselves.